chicken tikka. We name drop here with Stefan, Mike, and whoever.
You know what, Dr. G? I want you to hang out here because then our next guest we're bringing up here, he actually wrote a beautiful letter, and I just checked it out this morning. First of all, his dad, musical genius. I'm a huge fan.
Me
and
too.
I happened to come across him on Facebook. I'm like, oh my goodness. And then he wrote, and I read this powerful letter that he wrote to his dad. And I'd like you to be here for this one. And we got to hear his story. His name is Zak Nilsson, and his dad was Harry Nielsen, big greatest hits that he wrote, you know. And really, here's a great picture of him. I'm going to bring him up here if you guys are all ready for him. So hang out here for a second. There's Zak and Harry Nielsen right there, the legend. Welcome to the show. Hey, Zak, how you doing, my friend? Welcome. Can you hear
Good,
me
thank you.
okay?
How you doing?
Hey, buddy. How you doing? How you doing?
Nice to meet
man?
y'all.
Now,
Nice
hey,
to meet
Zak,
you,
really
Zak.
quick. This is Dr. G, and up there next to me, that's Corey Leventon. He used to work for Circus Magazine, but he got fired. You know, don't worry about him. But really quick.
What an intro.
What an intro. But hold on, Dr. G and Corey, 1 second. I just want to talk to Zak 1 second. I'm going to bring you guys back in here. Zak, we finally get to meet each other, so I want to just make sure you sound good. You can hear me good. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's kosher. Okay.
Yep, all good.
Let me ask you. Your dad, was he from Brooklyn?
He was originally from Brooklyn. He was born in Brooklyn.
Wow. Okay. Because I'm from Brooklyn too.
Yeah.
That's why I have the Brooklyn cab driver hat.
Right.
That's, you know, it helps the receding. And hey, man, I got to be honest with you. I want to learn now about you and the folks over here that are watching. I read this powerful letter you wrote on Facebook, and I read it this morning. You wrote it on your dad's birthday, I believe, and it's pretty intense. And it's like I was like
Yeah.
touched by that, man. You know?
Oh, thanks.
Really touched, and I wanted to share it with everybody. And you know, I want to first of all give you a big round of applause for coming on here. It's an honor to have you here.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah,
No problem.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring Corey back, and I just want to introduce myself. Here's Corey. Here's Dr. G, really quick. And Corey, here we got Zak and Corey now.
Zak, love your dad. Saw him speak at a Beatles Fest about 25 years ago.
Oh, that's cool.
One question I wanted to ask, I'd start off with is both Harry and John Lennon had fathers who abandoned them. John gets a mixed score at the end of his life. He abandoned Julian, but he did right by Sean. How would you rate Harry as a dad?
Oh, Harry was really good as a dad. Unfortunately, I didn't live with Harry growing up because they got divorced when I was 4 or something like that, and I went to live with my mom. But despite that, Harry actually paid her more alimony, child support than the state required, just because he felt so guilty. And every opportunity, I would fly down to LA and we would hang out. And despite not actually living with him, we still had a really good relationship. I could call him on the phone anytime and we would talk. And then, as you may or may not know, he got remarried after that to Una, and they had 6 kids.
6 children, yeah.
Yeah. But the good news is we all got along, and to this day, we all get along really well. We're all Harry's kids, you know, and it's just sort of evolved into this big thing where we're all still kind of this big family, despite the fact that I'm sort of the black sheep because I was a little bit on the outside, but it doesn't matter. And they all feel that Harry was a really good dad too. They were all younger than I am, unfortunately, so they didn't get as much time with him. But even me, who was, you know, sort of on the outside, like I was saying, he was still a really good dad to me, and I'm grateful for all the time I had with him.
So you are not a Julian.
Right.
I interviewed Mickey Dolenz once about the Hollywood Vampires, and he told me that everybody in that group, which actually most people don't realize was originally a softball team, and then it devolved into this nocturnal alcoholic crazy fest. He told me that Harry was the scariest of all of them. He said he would show up at the Rainbow Room, walk up to the top of the stairs, remember drinking a Brandy Alexander, and then he would wake up in Phoenix with Harry.
Yeah. That sounds about right from what I've been told. I obviously wasn't there, but I've heard that from multiple people that there would be a point at which you became friends with Harry, and then you sort of lived in fear of him showing up at your house and saying, "Hey, we're going somewhere," and you would be gone for the next 3 days or 4 days, and you would end up in the Midwest or something, and you wouldn't know how you got there. And yeah, that actually happened to people.
It sounds like it was a love mixed with alcoholism, which is a horrible recipe. But
Yeah.
was he cognizant of the fact that he had a problem? Did he ever think of it that way?
Yeah. He knew he had a problem. He had an addictive personality. He had to do what everyone else was doing. Everyone else was drinking. He had to drink. He couldn't stop himself. He knew. Una would tell him, and his friends would tell him, and he just couldn't stop. He couldn't help himself. And eventually he did stop much later in life, but it took a while. And even then, like, he would ask my sister Annie to go get him a glass of milk and ice, because that's what a Brandy Alexander was without the brandy, because he just couldn't help it.
I want to ask you a Jordan the Lion. Jordan would ask you this question first about your dad's London apartment. Now, this is freaky deaky. Both Mama Cass and Keith Moon died in your dad's apartment.
Yeah.
I had to chime in on this because I went there in front with Jordan. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. It freaked him the hell out. He sold the apartment after the second death. I don't think he ever really knew what happened or why. It was just a coincidence in both cases, but he couldn't hold on to that apartment after that.
I went out. So it was first Mama Cass, right, that passed away in that.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. And have you been to that apartment?
I was never there.
Oh, you were never there. Okay.
No.
You ever took a visit out there and looked outside? You ever go out?
Not to that apartment. I've been to London a couple times. Once with Harry, but we never went to that apartment. I don't think he ever wanted to go back there.
Yeah.
Now, the chicken bone story was completely made up, right, for publicity's sake.
Sorry, which one?
The chicken bone story about the fact that she choked on a chicken bone or a ham sandwich.
That's what I've heard. Unfortunately, I'm not an authority. I don't know for sure, but I've heard that was not true. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's wild, huh? It was Mama and Keith after the Paul McCartney, the Buddy Holly movie. He went back there after the party. And
Yeah.
He passed on. That's crazy, huh? And Keith was friends with Harry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he was in the Hollywood Vampires.
He was in the Hollywood
Yeah.
Vampires. That's wild. What a whole. John and Harry were really tight, especially with
Yep.
the Lost Weekend. They were like tight. When you mentioned Brandy Alexander, I think that was I remember reading a thing about Lennon, a biography. That was his favorite drink at the time. When he was a kid. But,
I wouldn't be surprised if that's how it got started. Yeah.
the brandy, but they were really. It's funny because was Harry obviously everybody the Beatles. He was a huge Beatles fan, right? And then,
Yeah.
But Lennon was a big Harry fan, and then they almost looked like brothers.
In a 68, there's a 68 press conference when John and Paul came to America to talk about opening Apple Records. They didn't know Harry Nilsson, and they were asked to name their favorite American band, and both Paul and John said Harry Nilsson. They didn't know him at the time.
Yeah, they said Nielsen was their favorite group.
Yeah, Nilsson. Crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. Harry always believed that the Beatles were the best. He always believed that. And then once he sort of hit it big in the late 60s and the Beatles became aware of him and listened to him, they started calling him on the phone. And he was just, it was like the best thing that ever happened to him in his life. Getting a call from Paul McCartney, getting a call from John Lennon. It's John, on the phone. Like, what do you say to that? It's John. What do you mean, John? It's John Lennon. Oh my God. So that's how he was. He was just the Beatles' biggest fan. And then he became their best friend and just, and it just sort of went from there. And like you said, they were like brothers and they fought like brothers and they hung out like brothers and they laughed like brothers. And are you familiar with the Pussycats album and everything that happened with that? Because
his voice was in shreds by then.
Yeah. And it's because he had a screaming contest with John Lennon, and which you can't do. You can't beat John Lennon at screaming. So especially with Harry's voice, Harry didn't have that kind of voice. He had a very, very classical voice. It was gentle, you know. He had a 3.5 octave range. He could sing anything. He'd sung classics, you know. And then they did Pussycats, and John kept pushing him and pushing him and pushing him, and he said, "We're doing Many Rivers to Cross," you know, by Jimmy Cliff, and you got to scream it, you know. And there was blood on the microphone because he blew out his vocal cords. Yeah.
Wow.
And because he wouldn't stop, because Harry had that personality. He would get pushed to do something and he couldn't stop. And John would just push him and push him. And it's just like this rivalry, like a brotherly rivalry, because they still loved each other. And it took a while for his vocal cords to recover, and they never really fully came back.
They never came back from that session. Huh?
Yeah.
A mixture of having a good time, partying with your friends, making some good music. I mean, it's actually I love that record, actually.
Yeah.
You know, have you come across any hidden gems like from Harry and John that nobody's heard? That's maybe
I've heard a few things, nothing really spectacular. I do have one thing with Harry and Paul, and that was from a hotel in Paris where it was Paul and Linda and Harry and my mom, Diane. Mm-hmm. The four of them were in a hotel room in Paris, and my mom had a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and she was just recording everything that they were doing, and Paul started playing Blackbird on an acoustic guitar before the White Album came out. No one had ever heard it before. And Paul just started playing it and singing it, and then Harry started singing along. So there's a recording of Harry harmonizing with Paul on Blackbird before the White Album even came out, which I thought was pretty amazing. So I've heard a couple things. My brother Kifo is sort of the family historian and keeper of the faith, and he's got all the secret tapes and everything.
The most famous historically tape occurred before Pussycats started recording. Now I'm going to get so deep into the weeds, you're going to block me on Facebook. Paul dropped by the sessions, and almost nobody knows this. It didn't come out till, well, you know what I'm getting to. But May Pang wrote about it in her 1983 book, and then people thought she was lying. So there's no way this happened. Paul came by, started playing drums on Ringo's kit, and jamming with John Lennon in 1974. And everybody on Earth wanted to hear this recording and what happened because no one had ever thought that they had ever reunited during this time they were feuding, supposedly. Well, you can find it. It's on YouTube, and it's called A Toot and a Snore. And it's unfortunately an embarrassment because of the alcohol. It's barely listenable, and you just cringe the whole time. And it's so unfortunate. The one time they got together, they couldn't even make music. How did you feel when you first learned about this tape? I know it must have moved you in some way and disappointed you.
Yeah, like everyone else, I wanted it to be great, you know. But what are you going to do? In '74, they were still. That was right in the whole Hollywood Vampires phase, and Harry was in party mode at that point. And I mean, what are you going to do? He was with his friends. All he wanted to do was just hang out and party. So yeah.
I surmise that you've never met John because his was probably a nocturnal friendship, and you didn't come along. You were a kid back then.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was one of those things where Harry always told me he really wanted me to meet John. He always wanted me to meet John. It was his friend. I was his kid. You know, he wanted us to all hang out together and be happy together and have fun and make jokes. And it just never happened for whatever reason. When I would visit Harry, John wasn't in the U.S. When we went to London, you know, or just whatever, it just never worked out. So,
but he did take you to meet George.
Yeah, he took me to meet George once in '91, and that was insane. I mean, that's just, if you're a Beatles fan, just.
Hey, Zach, I got to break the news.
Tell us about it.
Zach, can I tell you something? A secret?
Yeah.
You're in the middle right now. It's like you're surrounded by two Beatle nuts.
It's a Beatle nut sandwich.
Like, if it's okay with you, I don't know
You're
if you're a
meat.
Beatle nut, I'm a Beatle nut. You tell me your George Harrison story, I'll tell you my Les Fratkin story, who played George in Beatlemania.
All right, shut up.
Whatever. Hold on. Whatever I can do to impress Zach. Zach. I just want to be your friend. Give me George. I'll give you Les. Is that fair enough?
That's a deal. You got a deal. All right. Yeah, in 91, Harry was going to London because his friend Terry Gilliam from Monty Python was making the Fisher King movie. And Terry wanted Harry to come out and sing a song for the end credits. So Harry came out and he recorded I Like New York in June, How About You? For the end credits of the Fisher King. And we did that at Abbey Road. And I was fortunate enough to come along on this trip. And I was there in the room when he recorded it. One of the few things I was in the room for.
Wow.
And that was astounding all on its own. But on one of the days off when we weren't recording, Harry and I got into a car and we drove out to George Harrison's monastery, because it was a monastery.
Yeah.
And we got through the gate and we pulled in and we got out, and the massive gardens in front of the monastery. And we saw George just power walking through his gardens, like actually power walking. And he came up to us and Harry introduced me, which was unnecessary, obviously. Yeah. And we went inside, and it was just me and Harry, and then it was George and Olivia and Danny, and that was it. It was literally just the five of us at George's house. It was a very private setting, and in that setting, it was amazing to talk to George because it wasn't a public appearance. It wasn't a fan-based thing. It wasn't anything like that. It was just a meeting of old friends, and we just had very natural feeling conversations, and it was just honestly mind-blowing. And George took us on a tour of his house, and we went to his studio on the second floor, and it was a full-size studio in his house. And inside the studio, there's a wall covered with George's guitars. Covered. There were at least 30 guitars on the wall, or 40 maybe. There's the one that Jimi Hendrix gave him. There's all his traveling Wilbury guitars are up on the wall. And of course, all his Beatles guitars, all the special ones, the guitar that he used on the Ed Sullivan Show. If you're a Beatles historian, you would have gone crazy looking at this. And I didn't even know what all of them were necessarily, but I knew some of them were. And just the history, and just with George standing right next to me, looking at all these things and just talking to him. And I don't know, it was just, because I'm a Beatles fan as much as anybody. And it was just this combination of crazy, like, hey, George is this cool guy, and hey, George is a member of the Beatles. I was just completely fanboying and trying to keep it to myself a little bit. And it was a really, really amazing experience. And George in that setting was a really, really nice guy.
I mean, how could you not? How could you not be,
Yeah.
It's just, look at me and Corey right now. Like, I want to know, like, did you want to take a picture? Like, did you have a camera, or did you?
I wish.
What did it smell like? Eggs?
It didn't smell like much. It was I don't know. It was just a regular house, or it smelled like one anyway. It was huge.
Cool.
The front,
the front entryway, it was all stone, but it was littered with guitar cases, all kinds of guitars, regular guitars, like ukuleles, like little guitars, huge guitars. And when I say littered, I mean stacked 10 high, many stacks of guitars. And George actually pulled one out. It was just a little ukulele, and just started playing it just for no reason, just tootling around. And then we walked around the house and just, yeah.
He used to keep 2 or 3 in his trunk, or at the boot of his car. He said,
Yeah.
You never know who you might meet.
That's funny. My buddy Dave. Thank you, Jordan. That's my buddy Jordan the Lion. Nielsen was legendary, and a neighbor to Earl Skakel, a buddy. Earl's a comedian. Have you heard of Earl, Zach?
I've heard of him. Yeah, I don't think I've ever met him.
Oh, he's related to the Kennedys. He doesn't work a day in his life, but he's a comedian. But he's not very funny. Earl, I love you.
Funny. Shut up. There's no good segue into this, so I'll just let you kind of do it Zach, Paul
Don't blow it.
McCartney
Don't
wrote
ruin the
you.
relationship,
I'm
Corey. Come
not.
on, it's going good.
Paul McCartney wrote you a letter recently, and I wanted you to sort of share what was in the letter and then take the story from there without me just suddenly leading you on about this.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I was diagnosed with cancer about a year and a half ago, and Paul wrote me a letter, just saying I don't have it in front of me, but it was just basically saying that he supported me. He knows what I'm going through with the chemo because his wife went through chemo, and
Nancy.
yeah, and it was just really thoughtful, honestly. I was surprised because I've never actually met Paul either in person, but he was just aware of me, I guess. And somebody must have told him that I was diagnosed, and he wrote this letter, and I was just blown away, actually, because it was just a very nice thing for him to do.
Wow. Now I didn't know what Nancy. She.
Chevelle.
Oh, she. 'Cause I'm thinking Linda right away.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Wow. And Zach, honestly, today, when I reached out to Zach for the show, everybody watching. Me and Zach and I didn't know each other, and I just saw something with Harry Nielsen. I go, oh wow, and then I started like, hey, would you mind before even going deeper into, because I was a huge Harry Nielsen. I go, would you mind being a guest on the show? And then today when I started, because I'm in the middle of moving, I'm all cuckoo Fran and Ollie in my world right now. And then I read your letter. I was about to your dad. I go, oh my god, and I sent it to you, Corey. And I was touched inside by it. I go, wow. And I was about to have a tear in my eye watching it. Wow.
You said that this was the last time you might be able to communicate with each other before you see him again. So things aren't going well health-wise.
Yeah, unfortunately. I was just hospitalized a couple weeks ago, and it was because we found out eventually after 8 x-rays and 2 CT scans that I've got more tumors, and it's spreading around, and one actually moved to my liver, which is never a good thing. So what I meant by that was simply that we've seen an increase in the number of cancerous tumors that I've got, and we're seeing that it's spreading, and it's incredibly aggressive. Like if I stop chemo for any amount of time, they just start growing like crazy. So unfortunately, chemo is limited because it works for a while, and then your body grows resistant to it, and then it stops working. And then they have to try something else. And the problem is I'm on my 3rd separate regimen of chemo now. And this one is working. What it does is keep it in place. It doesn't fix everything. It just stops it from growing. And once this one stops working, we don't think there's any other option for chemo. So I think this is the last one. And what that means is, unfortunately, that I probably don't have that much longer, which I'm not happy about, but that's seems to be the truth of the situation right now.
What goes through your mind? I mean, what are your priorities, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I've had some time to think of it, about a year and a half now, and so I've gone through the whole 5 stages of grief thing, and I'm at acceptance at this point because I don't really have much choice. I'm just mostly, it's just a lot of realization that once you're gone, you're gone. You don't continue. You sort of, I'm coming to the realization that like I have plans for the future, and they're not really going to happen. Like I can't, like what's going to happen to this and what's going to happen to that? Well, nothing is going to happen. I'm not going to feel anything. I'm not going to remember anything. I'm just going to be gone. And that's one of the things I've had to come to terms with. And then just the rest of it is just the stuff you have to do, like making plans. Like I now have a hospice company set up, which means that they're going to help me through the last stages of all of this, which is hard to talk about, but it has to be talked about, because if you don't, then you're not prepared. And then it's much worse for both for me and for everyone around me. And we don't want that. We want, we want people to be taken care of, and we don't want this to turn into a huge hassle for everyone. So that's what it comes down to pretty much.
I mean, Zach, you're very brave to talk about this on the show right now, and our prayers are with you and your family, and I thank you, and it's bringing awareness to this awful disease to others, because some people don't know how to handle it. It's like everybody's, I guess, placed here for a reason, and then your story can help others and soothe others mentally what people go through in life. It's tough, and life throws awful curveballs at times. We're not prepared for it, and it's not fair. We have a gentleman here, Gary Foresman, a doctor, and we do. I don't know if you ever watched the show. So Fridays it's Corey with the doctor, and that started out Corey calling him a prick.
Irresponsible prick.
Yeah, yeah, and now they became friends, and he's a great guy, and that's my show's about banter and all this stuff. And I didn't mean to get everybody. So this is reality, and we are a live show. So Zach, you're a wonderful guy, and I'm glad. I want to. Get to know you more, because it's actually nice to meet somebody that's awesome and open. And
thanks.
You wear your heart, open, and it's a wonderful way to be. And this is Gary Foresman, Dr. G. Welcome.
Morning, Zach.
You meet Zach over here.
Hi.
And just Corey, don't curse the doctor out with Zach. And so we're all here right now. And I mean, Dr. G, you see a lot of people also going through something, with what Zach's going through, and the best way they could handle it.
Yeah, well, I do a lot of integrative oncology, Zach, and I'm assuming you've been through all forms of treatment, not just the chemotherapy-based things. I hope, anyways. And so, make sure, because I see people, and so, for instance, internationally, the number one treatment for cancer really is actually mistletoe extract, and mistletoe extract has a long history. You've probably been through these things, Zach, but there's other forms of immunotherapies and GC-MAFs and all kinds of things, intravenous vitamin C's and treatments that can be used synergistically with chemotherapy. And again, I don't know what you've been through, Zach, and I'm not trying to doctor you. I'm just trying to make sure people are aware that that there is this idea that, because I'm an integrative medicine person, that I tend to have this problem where I'm either too Western for some people or too Eastern for some people, and I'm very much just trying to help people, with whatever works, because if something is safe and it works. So, like we brought up melatonin for the coronavirus. Well, melatonin is the single most important additive treatment to help with chemotherapy and things like that. And unfortunately, many of the Western oncologists don't even recommend these things. I hope you've had people that worked with you that are open to what things are done along with the chemotherapies or radiations or surgeries and things like that. But no, sometimes you try everything with people and they don't work, or the ketogenic diets. I don't know if you've been through that as well too. And but as we talk to people, there are things that you can do that aren't, so everybody knows that, is that when we see somebody with cancer, make sure you're seeing an oncologist, for heaven's sakes, and get the Western chemotherapeutic viewpoint. But my heavens, just like everything else we treat, there are so many other viewpoints in the world, immunotherapy-wise, integrative oncology-wise, so that people hopefully, and I really am empathetic for what you're going through, Zach, but hopefully can get people early on and not waiting until, they've been through 3 bouts of chemotherapy and things before they try to do things. So hopefully you've been with doctors that have been open to other things, not just the chemotherapies.
Yeah. And honestly, one of the things I learned is, unfortunately, we caught mine late. That was the biggest problem. We caught it late. And the reason for that is because, as one of my doctors told me, I have the most cancer they've ever seen in someone my age. So I'm proud of that. I broke a record.
Wow. Yeah. Not what you want to hear now.
Yeah, I know. But the point is, get a colonoscopy. That's the point. Okay. It doesn't matter, because they don't recommend that until you're 50 usually, 50 something. But do it before you're 50 is what I'm saying. Colonoscopies are easy. You don't feel anything. It's not a bad thing, but do it, because you have to catch it early. That's all there is to it.
So Zach, that's what happened with you. It was the colonoscopy you went for.
Well, no, that's the problem, because I didn't get a colonoscopy.
You didn't get one.
And then I had GI pain, and I had to go to urgent care. They couldn't figure it out. They sent me to the hospital. Eventually, they found just massive tumors. And
wow.
And at that point, it was basically too late.
Zach, how were you? How was your before? How old were you when you went for when you found out that you had
a year and a half ago? So how old was I?
I'm 52 now.
I was 48.
Okay, 48.
Is there any family history?
I was just going to ask you.
Not of colon cancer. My mom died of lung cancer, but she was a smoker, and from what I've been told, it's not related.
Yeah,
Wow.
some cancers, the younger you get them, the more aggressive they are. And I'm so sorry for you, Zach, because I actually, as we talked about colonoscopy in one of our shows, and I
Yeah.
don't strongly recommend it until 50, unless there's a history of familial polyposis and other things, and certain diseases like ulcerative colitis, and hopefully you didn't have that. And but you're right in that we should be the general recommendation for screening is 50, like you said.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys, especially, don't even get it then. And as you're pointing out, you don't want to wait until you. That's why it's called screening. Everybody, you don't wait until you have symptoms, because symptoms doesn't mean you're screening anymore. You know, you're evaluating.
Yeah.
So yes, we get colonoscopies. I got mine at 50, and fortunately was clear. And just for everybody out there, what Zach is telling you is true. There's too much info out there how dangerous colonoscopies are. They really, in the right hands, are not dangerous. No, seriously, Corey, there's a lot of people who say that. And I'm not saying there's nothing that's zero risk in this world, folks. I'm not saying that nothing ever happens, okay? But no, screening colonoscopies are a reasonable thing, no matter how healthy you are, even if you're a meditating vegan, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and yours, like you're saying, sometimes tumors that are very fast growing, Zach, you just can't catch them. You know, meaning you could have had a colonoscopy at 45 and somebody might have missed it, you know, because fast growing tumors are tough to screen for, and that's not usually the case with colon. So sorry.
Hey Doc, I've had 2 colonoscopies, but I remember at an annual 2 years ago or a year ago, I was given this kit with a paper to put over your toilet and then poop on, and then take a sample and bring them. And I was told it was to check for colon cancer. What was that?
There is, the Cologuard is all over the TV, but Cologuard is a screening test for people who don't want colonoscopies for whatever reason, and they're good at picking up on, and I don't know about, you just meant the paper was just to help you collect the poop, by the way, but so you can, and it's a combination of looking for the old Hemocult, was just blood screening along with some genetic analyses, and that's this Cologuard, which is decent at picking up on cancers. You're actually trying to find polyps, everybody. The goal of a colonoscopy is hopefully to get it done and to be crystal clear. However, if you do find something, the hope is all you're going to find is a polyp, not a cancer. Okay, and you can extract the polyp, which means cut it out, and even prevent cancer. And so
the Cologuard test screens only for a cancer that's already developed. You need to find the polyps before they develop into cancer.
Bingo. And that's why it's not a substitute at all for colonoscopy. It's really, in my practice, I've had a few people who did them because they refused to get a colonoscopy. And if they refused to get the right test, then I said, well, then let's do this. Like we were saying earlier, if somebody refused to wear a mask, then let's wear a shield. Let's do something, you know. And you're right, Zach. Screening is so much better than treatment. Okay.
Yeah.
And yes, I unfortunately had a friend who worked with me who died from colon cancer with a very similar story to yours. And unfortunately, he too also had a very fast growing colon cancer. It occurred actually at 52, which probably means it was, he missed screening for a little bit. But, the question is kind of with a colonoscopy, with the changes that are occurring in its epidemiology, should we start pushing the screening recommendations back a little bit?
I think so.
And the answer is very possibly. And so, so it's as you know, there's a lot of debate in terms of the costs of these things, et cetera. But everybody knows that ounce of prevention really is worth a pound of cure. And so, so prevention is truly the best medicine. And so,
awareness, and just be on top of it. I mean, hey, you got to be. My cousin passed away from colon cancer. I got my wife. I'm sorry. My wife keeps yelling at me. I'm sorry, guys. I have this. I don't know how to turn it off. Amber, I got a wife that's always. Everybody has a Yoko. This is mine. I'm sorry, guys.
I don't know if Amber would appreciate that.
Don't worry about her. She has. I got health insurance because of her. I'm fake YouTube guy over here. But listen, just drive me crazy, this witch head. I'm not Amber. I didn't call you a witch. Look at that.
Man.
Always a little humor with ADIKA. Always got to smile because laughter is the best medicine.
It is, and so.
You know what? Yeah, I come from a crazy Jewish family. Nobody wants to tell you what they got, so everything's like, don't worry. It's like everything's a secret with my Yenta family. But I had a cousin that did pass away from colon cancer. Supposedly there's none of it in our family, so I went for the colonoscopy, and I was scared because I'd never been put under, but it was the best in the world, the high in the world. I was afraid I wasn't going to wake up. I was out of my mind, and I went out. It was done and easy pleasy, but no polyps. But how often, like a guy, you're 50, no polyps? How often should you check? What? Because they could just, you took it at 50, you're clean.
Well, see, the natural history of colon cancer is it usually develops over a 25-year period, 25 to 30-year period. This is usually, I'm not saying with you, Zach. And so the screening interval really of a colonoscopy every 10 years after 50 is reasonable, unless you have a first-degree relative. So, Zach, with you become the history in your family where everybody should be screening like 20 years. So for a point of information, people, so you first got diagnosed at 48, I think you said. And so everybody in his family should actually start screening, at least first-degree relatives, family relatives, by 28, which, that would be the history that you'd say, well, we start screening this family at 28. His family, you'd be screening probably every 3 to 5 years because of the history of the kind of tumor. Yeah. And so yes, you do more aggressive screening in people with first-degree relatives with history such as Zach's. But the general recommendation right now that most people still, it's tough for them because they're afraid of colonoscopies, is every 10 years after 50. And, of course, the epidemiology is that we want to eat whole food diets and avoid processed foods and processed meats, et cetera, and minimize the risk factors, et cetera. Yeah. Smoking is actually only a tiny risk factor when it comes to colon. So
is it more like the Hebrew national salamis and all that Jewish deli food?
It's deli food, yeah. That's tends to be the bigger issue as far as that goes. But even as I said, it's even people. I use meditating vegans, but even if you're a vegan, please don't say, well, that makes me immune to colon cancer, because it's just not true. Your colon, like your bladder, is exposed to so many of the toxins in the environmental world, and so that's why your excretory organs, sorry, I try to keep this clean, are the ones exposed to most of the toxins in the world. And so that's why I do think we're going to see the risk screening come earlier and earlier for people. And cooking with a kid, the prep is worse than the actual procedure. That is actually true for all of us who've had it.
The prep wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad for me when I did the prep. It was easy. I did some Gatorade. They gave me something, and then it was easy. Right. I didn't
That's
drink
not Gatorade, dude.
No, I didn't drink crazy.
Not quite Gatorade.
They gave me X-Lax. I didn't drink no crazy magic potion. It was some X-Lax. I just took my iPhone. I sat on the toilet and I watched Jordan the Lion.
Wow. Usually X-Lax is not enough. I've done sigmoidoscopies. Yeah. Otherwise, you're doing like a video game and you're just cruising around people's poop and you can't see a whole lot, So you really need a good clean prep to really actually do this adequately. So
I got to hide from my wife in the bathroom. I didn't have to do anything. And then nobody hocked me Chinik. I hid in the toilet. It was nice.
So, Zach, is there anything about the course of what you've been through you want to share with people? I know it's a very personal journey, and I'm not trying to, just say no if you don't want to. Is there anything about your journey information you get to people that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot. Obviously, you learn a lot when you go through something like this. One thing I learned is, if you're wondering why you need to get a colonoscopy, I mean, aside from the reasons we've already said, it's partially because one of the things I learned is that your intestines, your colon, doesn't have nerve endings. You can't feel what's going on in there. If you feel something going on in there, it's probably already too late. So that's the way it was with me, because I started getting pressure because I had a huge blockage. And that's the only reason I felt anything. And by then it was already way too late. Yeah, so correct. That's the main reason. Other things, I mean, one of the things that happened with me, I discovered, is that I ended up saying something I never thought I'd say to someone who is a friend of mine who works in the field of palliative care. And we were talking, and I just said, I don't know what to do. I've never died before. And that kind of said it all, because you don't think about it. You really don't. You sort of think about it in passing sometimes. Well, what if I was dead? I don't know. My friends would be sad. But there's so much more to it than that. because your existence ends. Your entire presence ends. Everything you've ever known through your whole life ends for you. And how do you deal with that? And how do you how do you wrap your head around that?
But I forgive me for, because I don't know what you're going through. I can't possibly know, but Buddhists would say it's just an end of the ego, of the self that you. I mean, you've obviously been through that. But I have a little exercise, and I'm not claiming this will help you or anything. Describe for me how you felt on the morning of March 12th, 1923. How about April 5th, 1850? You didn't exist, so you already know what it's like to not exist. It's the existence that's the abnormality. And if you meditate on thoughts like that, it doesn't really seem like you're being ripped from existence as much. I mean, there's so much about life science that we don't understand yet. And if you read about quantum physics, the stuff that's going on that level is crazy, like magical crazy. Mm-hmm. So the whole thought of that you're going through this existence and this is a real existence and it's going to end is probably incorrect, because there's nothing about our lives that's actually real. All right, I'll shut the hell up.
You're a real Maharishi over here, Leventon.
This is science.
Maharishi and the Beatles, we're circling back.
And of course, everyone has different thoughts on what happens after you die, and that's completely up to you. One thing I would say is, if you find out that something like this is happening, if you find out that you have cancer or something else, or it doesn't matter, I've found out how important it is to have friends, a support system, and people to talk to that are licensed, like psychologists, palliative care experts, hospice experts. You need to talk to these people. You have to have an understanding of what happens when you die and leading up to it and everything. It's so important. You can't do this by yourself. Not in the sort of society that we live in, that we've all grown up in. We're used to talking with people and being around people and stuff like that. And when you're talking about the end of your own existence, you've got to have some perspective. And it helps. It helps a lot. Sometimes some people have a stigma about talking to psychologists because they think it's not cool or makes them weak or something like that. And you have to do it. It helps. It helps you get through it. It helps you sort of get through all the things that you need to get through in order to finish this process.
Zach,
and
is
thank
there
you,
any
Zach.
Books, I'm sorry, Dr. G. Is there any book that you're reading or something that's helping you right now through these tough times that you're doing to help you get through these tough times? Anything? I'm
not reading any books at the moment, but I am in conversation with a number of people who are in end of life care, and in addition to setting up our official hospice care, which is basically a number that we call when we decide that we're stopping treatment. But aside from that, I have a friend from high school who ended up going into the field of end of life. So I've spoken with her on the phone, and some other friends that are also in the same field. So just
and for everybody, Hospice is a great organization. I've been with many people through this process, Zach, and it's like birth. It's an individual experience, and so it has to be. You have to be allowed get some guidance, but what you go through and how you go through this is so individual, and that's one of the gifts that I have as being a doctor, is being with people through this experience. And so what you're saying is so important for everybody to hear. Hospice is a great resource for people with end of life. You don't have to wait until there's at the end of things. You should contact them. The point you said about having other counselors and trained people, family members are usually too attached to let you go through the dying process in the way that you might want to. So your family members sometimes aren't the best ones to help you through this. Keep them with you, of course. I'm just saying get some other advice, because there's too much attachment sometimes with the family members, and they sometimes want to hold on to you tighter and when you want to be let go. And I've been that with so many families. And so getting expert help to help you go through your own process so you can more eloquently say to your family members about how you want to go through this is such an important thing. So yes, hospice is a great, your local hospice organization is a great resource of where to get help like this. And yes, and dovetailing back to Corey, most spiritual trainings are about how all fear is fear of death, and learning to become comfortable with your own death is such an important part of living. And so I agree. And whether you go Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, or however you look at this, there's many resources to help how people have looked at this, because it is one of the universal experiences of all people is that they die. So everybody out there, we have to become more comfortable with that, because that fear is what's driving so many behaviors, including addictions and other things as well too. So losing the fear of death is one of the great gifts you can give yourself. But that's you can only do by diving straight into it. And so, which is a tough thing to do. And
Zach, what's the best advice that you've gotten so far?
That's a good question, because I've gotten a lot of advice from different people that I've talked to, different walks of life, different professions. I think the best advice I've gotten through this whole process was from my friend from high school, who encouraged me to set up hospice early. Set it up. Don't wait until you think you're going to die. Set it up early. Talk to them. Get it going. Get the number that you need to call, get it all set up and in place so that you have it. Because unfortunately, the process of dying can also be very painful depending on what you're going through, and you need something set up. You also need to check out the rules of death in your state, honestly. Not assisted suicide per se, but death with dignity, that sort of thing.
Right.
You need to learn about what is legal in your state and what you can do and what your options are. That's some of the best advice I've gotten so far, because you don't want legal issues after you're gone for your family,
right,
or for anyone that you're involved with for the hospice company or anything like that.
And invoking hospice doesn't mean you're giving up. That's what everybody thinks, and it's not true. You can work with them, and it's not until you get to the true end of life component of where you say, I'm not doing any more therapies, that what people think of as hospice really kicks in. And what you're talking about now is kind of just a part of an integrative strategy that says, this is a possibility. I'm going to become aware of it, but I'm going to go gung-ho and do the chemotherapies and do the other things. Because it's not giving up to bring in the hospice until you say at the very end, at this point, I'm just going to let the process occur. So thank you for that advice, Zach.
Yeah. Thank you, Zach. And
I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Like hospice aren't a bunch of vultures waiting for you to die. That's not what it is at all. They're in fact, I talked with my hospice doctor 2 days ago, and he's like, well, we'll be here. You've got our number. We understand that you're still on chemo and you're still fighting, and we're just going to stay here. And when you call us, we'll come.
Right.
Well, Paul Galata, who used to work for Circus Magazine, who Corey took his spot there, he was, he
brilliant
works with hospice now. He's a great guy, and he cares about his patients, and it's like a whole family he takes on. And I wish Paul was here to talk. He's a beautiful guy, good spirit. And so he left the rock world and then got into that. So, hey, Zach, I appreciate you coming here and sharing these stories, and hopefully we could help other people out there and with their emotions and get their checkups and awareness of this, everything going on. We live in crazy times too, man. It's just like everything, just besides what you're going through, just the other part, it's like in your head, okay, now the world, and you get isolated from the world, and it's such a crazy world. It's nuts.
Yeah.
I think the only thing we can do is, are you a Kiss fan?
Kiss fan?
Are you a Kiss fan?
Wow,
Actually,
what a segue.
When I was working in Las Vegas, I was part of a Kiss cover band for a couple things. That was pretty good.
I'm going to make you happy right now.
Peter Criss.
Okay, Zach, I'm going to make you happy right now. Peter Criss. He's from Brooklyn.
Is he?
Yeah. Canarsie. Yeah. And you see this guy over here? This is Oive. You didn't get to meet him. He's very quiet. He's in a band called Tame Fury. But more important, look behind him, Zach. Look at this.
Oh, yeah.
Look at all the Kiss stuff.
Nice.
He's friends with Peter Criss, too. He speaks to him on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Everything always comes back to the Beatles and Kiss on this show.
It always comes back to the kid. So
The Beatles and Kiss are my two favorite bands, so it works perfectly.
I mean, Zach, while we have this, we could always.
How you doing, Zach?
Yeah.
Good, thanks.
Because we could do a Kiss cover band, all of us right now, and we could put makeup on. And I could stream us private. We could have private time together and laugh, because that's the best medicine. And Corey's not a Kiss fan, but I just want to,
And that's why he got fired from Circus.
That's why he got fired from Circus. But I just try to end things with laughter, man. And I just want you are a wonderful person, a wonderful spirit. I appreciate you coming here, Zach. So let's give him a round of applause, everybody.
Thanks.
There's my wife. There's Yoko. God, she broke the band up. Don't break my show up. Zach, anything that I know, were you working on your dad that lost and found? Did you work on that, or was that your brother?
I didn't really work on that. That was mostly my brother Keith.
Okay.
He did most of the work on that with Mark Hudson.
Oh wow. I mean, I'd love to have you and your brother come back on the show if you want. After we talk some more about that down the road if you're into it.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, next week, Monday. I'm open. I'm moving, but I'll take you on the road with me. I got me and my 4-year-old running across the world. But yeah, man. Any shout outs you want to give to anybody, Zach? Anything that you have?
Just mostly what we discussed. Get yourself checked. You don't want to catch cancer late. But aside from that, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for all the Harry fans out there.
Yeah.
Me and Kifo and the rest of the kids are all really grateful for all of you out there. We see you on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and we're all just blown away by the continuing support for our dad. And it's just amazing. So thank you.
Yeah. And I thank you.
Cool.
Thank you. And I thank Harry for the beautiful music he's given us to listen to, too. In these crazy times, his music still is great to have. And you know what? One song will turn me on. I'll tell you my Harry. What turned me on to Harry Nielsen before Lennon was Midnight Cowboy. Everybody's talking.
Oh yeah, everyone's talking.
That was the one. Is that what broke Harry?
No, Without You in America is what broke him.
Okay. Now, was Harry part of the Wrecking Crew? Did he work
Not
with
really, but the members of the Wrecking Crew did sometimes play on a couple of his albums.
Okay, because I have a friend of mine that owns the Baked Potato in North Hollywood, and I used to play to Don Randy. He was one of the keyboards. It was Leon Russell, and Don would run that place, and yes. So I remember because I think Harry, he was doing songwriting as a wasn't he doing songwriting before he became
Initially, yeah.
Yeah, initially. Wow, picture that if you just would have been a songwriter, not Harry. God, because his music is wonderful. All right, everybody, this is Coffee Talk. I want to thank you. Hold on, you guys, 1 second. Don't sign off yet. Look at this great picture of Harry and Zach right here. I want to thank everybody for coming.
That looks like you, Stefan.
You know what? You know what? It's so funny.
It does.
We look like each other, and it's like I could be your brother, Zach. Maybe Harry had something killed. You never know. I don't think Harry. No, Yellen Ellen would never go. No, never had. My mom's too neurotic. It's crazy. Picture if I was your brother, Zach. You'd love me. You'd love me.
You actually look like my cousin Doug, who was Harry's cousin. Doug
Really?
Hofer. Yeah.
We could be related. See, Corey, you're just jealous because me and Zach are bonding now. You. This is why. There's the wife. There's the wife. Everybody, don't go nowhere. Zach, wait here. Doctor, you guys wait here because I want to answer for a second. We love you. It's the weekend. I want you guys to love each other. And everybody, give a hug to each other. And remember, everything and anything, any problems in the world, just tell people you know Corey Leventon. Corey, what do you have to say?
Thanks, Zach. I think that was our best show ever.
It was our best show ever. It really was, Zach. You're a true hero. Corey, you want to say anything to the fans before we go?
He's going to cut me off now.
No, I'm not.
He goes
Say
right to the credits.
That's not true. That's not true, Corey. Look at you. Look at you. What? Say something. Come on, dude.
Okay, everybody.
It's coming.